Hello guys, welcome back to another video. My name is David. For those of you who don't know me, I am a designer and researcher here at MIT, also studying architecture. And for today's video, I wanted to talk about the idea of observation and why I think observation is so underrated. I don't think many people talk about it or enough people talk about it. But if you think about it, observation is one of our fundamental human senses. It's one of our skills that we have, is to perceive, to look, and to make meaning of what we see. And so this video might be a bit more on the philosophical side, but it's an idea that I had for many, many years. I've always wanted to share my thoughts on observation because once in a while, I'll think to myself and I'll be like, you know what? Isn't it crazy to just be able to look at things and, make meaning out of it, really? So yeah, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about why observation is important in creativity, in design, but also just in life in general, for self-development, for learning, for understanding yourself, so that your own psychology, your own philosophy. So we're going to go into deep rabbit holes. Like most of my videos, I don't script anything. I'm recording with my iPhone and my Mac, like always, in my dorm room here in MIT. But yeah, it's going to be, it could be messy, no cuts, no edits, but we'll try to keep it very focused. So observation, why is observation so important? And the reason why I made this video, I explained it to you why I think it's important, but I was actually inspired because I was watching a documentary on Leonardo da Vinci. And I'm sure you guys probably know about him and what he did and his sketches and his notebooks and the inventions he's made. But it reminded me, watching this, that honestly, a lot of the things, all of the answers that you're trying to look for, if you're not even just a creative, but if you're just a human being and you're looking for answers, there's multiple sources of information you can get. You can read books, you can talk to people, your friends, your family, you can look for mentors, you can go on the internet, especially now with AI, you can ask ChatGPT, you can ask AI, large language models. If you have curiosity, if you have questions that you want to ask, you can, search all these things through the internet. But what I think, especially now, we need more of is more introspection. Is because if you think about it, society, there's so much society everywhere. Society through your phone, through your computer, through in public, and you're walking around, there's billboards, there's ads everywhere. You're constantly bombarded with advertisement of people's perception of things, or they're trying to get your attention, right? But I think if you really want to have a different perspective, and it's not about having the right answer or the better answer, it's just another way of seeing things, is to take this step back, be by yourself, go for a walk, go for a jog, go for a run, a bike ride, and take the time to just look around and look at things and ask yourself, why is it like this? I think this is really important because on one end, we're chronically online. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that the physical environment is important. We live in a physical world. And, there are some pros and cons to having this digital, physical kind of connection. But let's not forget that the physical environment is our reality, it's something you can touch, you can feel, you can smell. And a lot of the answers are right there in front of you. You just have to walk around, look at the buildings. Architecture is a good example. You look at the buildings around you and you ask yourself, well, first of all, if you appreciate the beauty, that's another thing. If you like what you're seeing, that in itself is an experience that, it's a blessing as a human to have. But then you can look at things and ask yourself, okay, why is it like this? Who made this? And then if it was made with care, that you will sense it. You will, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of Johnny Ive, who's a designer he was the original designer at Apple. One of my favorite people in the whole world because of his philosophy of design. Highly recommend you check his interviews, especially the one he did at Stripe in SF a while back. But he always brings up the idea of care, and designing is about putting care into objects, into things, into our environments, and communicating that to others so that, you're creating something for others. As a designer, if you really think about it, you are making something for someone else. You're not doing it for yourself. That's what an artist does. But a designer does something for others. And so that's why we try so much to understand, like, what are your needs? What makes you happy? What's your dream? What's a solution that could solve a problem that you have? You need a lot of empathy for that, but you also need to really care, And so with observation, if you walk around and you look at, not even just the superficial things, like obviously that's the first layer, but the more questions you ask, and you have to be very curious, you have to kind of always be contrarian and never take things for granted, and always be like, why is it like this? Is this how it should be? Is this, and then you try to understand the systems behind it. So like, for example, the best example is the concept of circular economy. So every object around us has a life cycle. The window of a building is composed of many components that have different materials, are sourced from different countries, manufactured in different countries, designed in different countries by different teams. But through social networks, we manage to all get together, collaborate in a productive way, and assemble this thing and create this object, this product that is a part of a larger product of architecture, like a building. And the building is composed of many, many components that themselves are made of components, and then themselves and then you can go into like the biology and the chemistry of the actual like materials that compose that product. You can go as large and as specific as you want. You can zoom in, zoom out, and it can become very philosophical and very like more like on the physical level, but all this to say that the reality that's shaped around us has been made by people like you and me. They've been conceptualized by humans, and, humans with their own flaws, with their own biases. But I think that's kind of reassuring for you, at least for me, because it kind of makes you realize that like anything can be designed, anything can be reimagined, rethought, and that everything is a human construct. Everything is made by us. And so being observant, if I bring it back to that idea, is about looking, is really about just looking, going outside, inside. You can be anywhere. You just have to start thinking. But really ask yourself, what if? And then, but then before that, you just have to look at things for how they are. And then we can start talking about like Buddhism or meditation or the act of being present. But really, being observant is looking at things and just really start to notice the little details of things. I think there's a saying, I think it might be trite, but it's the devil is in the details. And I think the more I study architecture and design and practice design and work in large teams, I realize how important details are. Really, it's all in the details, because details, what it really means is just looking more closely, is just looking at a different scale, with a different pair of eyes, with a different perspective. It's like a microscope. You're zooming in as deep as you can, but also sometimes you want to zoom out. And let's say, for example, in the field of product design, if we shift from architecture to, let's say, product design, let's say interactions, like UX, UI, that digital product. A lot of people think, that the UI is, it's not that important. It's just the aesthetic, it's the visual. But then the UX is the most important. The interaction, or not the interaction, the experience, the overall structure, the architecture, right? And I would argue that actually, both are important, obviously, but the micro interactions are what makes the experience. They're connected. They're the same thing. So I hate people who are saying like, oh yeah, you have to focus on the UI, you have to focus on the UX, or like, no, you have to be a product designer, you have to have like, they're all labels, but fundamentally the UI composes the experience because like we live our lives, we're visual human beings. Everything around us needs to have shape, needs to have form. And this brings me back to another idea, which is, I've had like this past week, a lot of design conversations with different teams, not only at the Sensible City Lab, but the Media Lab. And we're always, ideas or projects usually start as a conversation. It always starts off as, maybe a client comes up to us with a problem they're trying to solve, and they need guidance and ideas. And so it's like brainstorming, we're together, we have coffee, we're putting Post-its, we're sketching, we're looking at slides, like looking at references online. It's like very messy, but it's a conversation. It's just like brainstorming. And that's probably one of my favorite parts, is like just talking and conversating and bring ideas on the table. It's the drafting tables conversations that are really fun. But all of this is just talking. It's just conversations and ideas in the air. Nothing is physical. Nothing's tangible. You can't see it yet. It's in your head. It's in that storyline, What becomes really fascinating to me, and that's something Johnny Ive talks about as well a lot, is the transition from that phase to the first sketch strokes, through like the first time you actually draw it out, that you take objects together and you start making things and you start putting shape to your concepts, to your words. That for me is one of the most fascinating parts of design, is when you start putting shape to ideas. And it's very difficult. It's probably one of the most hard things to do, because you will be receiving a lot of criticism, because everybody has their own tastes, everybody has their own aesthetics, their own visions, their own, it's easy to critique. And that's why architecture is one of the most critiqued fields out there, because it's one of those products that anybody, the whole world can critique. But then when it works really well, for example, if you go to like really beautiful cities, if you go to Rome, if you go to Paris, if you go to Amsterdam, and you walk through these cities that are just so well curated with like clear vision and like very distinct, you appreciate the beauty of shape giving, of form making. But then it's deeper than that. That's like, again, it's just the visual aesthetic, but it comes with a system, with the lifestyle, the culture, how people live in it, the experience you get from being in that place. But that is really the hardest thing, is to give shape to ideas. And so the reason, if I connect that back to the micro interactions and the details, is that those beautiful cities, those beautiful products that you love using, the beauty around us, the things you use, or you like around us, really our environment, that work well, they're not just wholes, they're parts of wholes. They're details to them that is what makes it what it is. And so on one way, I'm saying this because, as a designer, as a creative, I think it's important to notice these things. And that connects back to why it's so important to be to be curious, and to always try to ask yourself why. That's it. That's all it is. Curiosity is just about asking why. You could ask other questions. You can ask how, where, who, like what. But why, I think, is more, I don't know. It's deeper. It's asking, okay, like looking at the bigger system, the bigger underlying network that explains. It's an explanation, basically, as to why things are the way they are. And it kind of branches out to many things. I think why is more important, and then that connects to what if. But why is more powerful because, like I said, it branches out more, and it allows you to explore more connections. Because I think creativity or design is really just about making connections together, is bringing things or creativity, I think as a whole, is just asking, okay, what if we brought this together, and then maybe make a crazy mutation, or kind of see, okay, what are the good things that we can get from this and this and this, and leave the not so important things. You need to have taste. You need to have judgment. It's curation, it's about almost like alchemy. This video is getting really like woo philosophical, but it's like alchemy. It's taking all these weird things and subjects that don't necessarily talk to each other, but then you as a curator, as a creative, you're kind of controlling the doses, you're controlling the percentage, the mix, the recipe. It's like cooking, and you're making something like a new recipe, a new dish that's never been done, but that people can taste and enjoy. And you're basically being a chef. You're basically making something to get a reaction out of someone that is going to be hopefully enjoyable and fun and all that stuff. So yeah, on one end, that's what I think about observation. It has to just, it doesn't need to be complicated. You could just, like I said, just go for a walk. I think one thing I really wanted to touch on as well, another point, is to take time off for yourself. And I talked about it in some of my other videos. And I'm probably the best person this is also an advice for myself, because I'm a workaholic. I tell my friends that sometimes it's really bad because I drag myself in projects, and it can lead to burnout sometimes, but it can become like a love-hate relationship where maybe I'm not taking care of myself as much because I'm just immersed in my work, and I don't, go out socializing sometimes. But I try to get a balance. I don't want to sound like a victim. I'm not trying to victimize myself. But something I'm trying to remind myself is that sometimes you'll work on projects, and the projects will take a lot of your energy. And sometimes it's not even your projects. You're working on somebody else's project, but you're really interested in it, and you're trying to help them out. Sometimes it can be a bit draining if someone tells you like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, and they're giving you tasks to do. That's just part of life, where that's how we collaborate. We try to delegate things. We try to, go towards the same goal. But sometimes it is very important to put a boundary between you and that other person or that project, and to really give time to yourself to think and to reflect, but also to observe, to look at the world and ask yourself the questions that, first of all, like, what do I want to do with my life? That's more of an introspective one. And I think it's important to ask yourself, like, what do I want to do in my life? Like, what is something that, would make me happy, or that would bring me joy? And that's a kind of that's a first superficial thing to ask. I think you can spend time in that state, but after a while, it becomes a bit, it can be a bit too heavy on you because it's a hard question to ask. But I think it becomes more productive, at least like more optimistic and more healthy, if you instead don't look inward too much, but look outward. Look at the world around you and ask yourself, like, how can I make this better? Not necessarily for myself, but for humanity, for the world. And it's a very selfless thing. But I think it will get you out of your mind, and it will give you a healthier perspective on life. So I think this is related to observation, because it's observing externally. And then obviously there's an interesting balance between observing externally but observing internally, because your brain interprets things in its own ways. We all have biases, we all have experiences and baggages, and that shape the way we see things. So understanding yourself, your psychology, like I highly recommend you take like the Big 5 personality test. You have to pay for that one usually, but that one is probably the closest thing to, real science on personalities. But understanding that is really important, because then it will shape the way you see things, and it will kind of inform your perception and observe. And then so if you start looking at things externally, and then it comes back to the thing I was saying, like, you realize that everything was made by humans and by people that are no smarter than you. That's a Steve Jobs quote. And you can literally just reinvent it. You can ask yourself, hey, how can I make this better? And this is what design is redesigning, restructuring, reframing everything. So you have to be contrarian. You can't just take things for granted. You have to be an independent thinker. You have to be critical. You have to be open. I mean, I talk about these in some of my other videos: open-mindedness, self-awareness, curiosity. But yeah, that's what observation is to me, is really just looking outwards. And then if I can also connect back to what I was saying about Leonardo da Vinci, what inspired me, and that's something I'm going to do right after this video, is I'm going to go buy some sketchbooks, because I don't think I'm sketching enough. I think I'm too focused. I'm too much on my computer, I realized, or on my phone. And I consume and I create through my computer, which, with time, you kind of start getting like in the flow state, and you're becoming fast, and you can like just ideate and, sketch on a computer. But with Leonardo da Vinci, I was like, man, this dude made some crazy sketches, so detailed. And like, it's not even just art. It's not even just the beauty of the sketches, but it's literally like a train of thought. It's seeing how he sketches, or how his thinking process works. So that's why you have a lot of notes. You have some drawings, some diagrams. It's not necessarily all structured. It's seeing his thought process. And I used to do that a little bit in architecture school. I had a mentor. His name is Juan. Shout out to Juan. He went to Harvard, and he graduated from Harvard now. But early mentor, older than me, he has a few geometric discoveries under his belt. He's always been sketching, he always has a sketchbook in his pocket, and he's like urban sketching, looking at the world and trying to make connections with like what he sees, and like mathematical geometry, and like he made some theorems just by looking. He's like he's like a Da Vinci of our time. And that inspired me. That's what got me into architecture. And I was like, okay, well, I need to, get back into looking at the world, and having a sketchbook and being kind of this observer and seeing things around me, and like seeing, okay, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? And so, yeah, that is something I think, on one end, if you can observe, so look, but also interpret it, and force yourself to to give shape to your ideas. And it can be very difficult because you need to abstract it. There's almost this translation effect that happens from, taking all this information and then synthesizing it into like a diagram or some sort of hieroglyph. If you think about a drawing is just an abstract representation of your ideas. And that's something I was exploring back when I was at McGill, when I was in the computational lab, is this idea of analysis and synthesis. That was like our research was trying to understand those two concepts, because analysis is just gathering data. Analysis is gathering data, making sense of that data, and just collecting and making and then putting these things together and having it like a list, like a database, basically, And you can, a lot of engineering is about that, and then you can like try to optimize it, or you have a specific thing you're trying to, like a goal you're trying to kind of optimize for. But with creativity, it's about synthesis. It's not analysis. It's not about understanding like just the data points, the specific data points, but it's about taking all of these data points and combining them together. Again, it's this alchemy, this kind of mixing process, this connecting the dots at different doses and synthesizing it into something interesting, into something different. It's creation from nothing, because analysis is fundamentally accepting that things are the way it is, and is understanding like what's out there. It's literally just like you're looking, you're observing, you're taking measurements, and it ends there. That's what it is. But synthesizing is none of that. It's about taking all of these things and mixing it together to create something new. Now, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, because I'm also trying to understand that. It's such a fascinating concept to me. And so I'm trying to make sense of all of this stuff. And it's something that's part of my research, and it's part of like just me trying to understand how to design and how to be creative. But really, synthesis is what design is all about. But you need to observe first. And so maybe observation is just analysis, is interpretation, is trying to understand what's in front of us. But that is the first step. You can't synthesize before analyzing. You can't create until you gather. It's like making a cake without the ingredients. You need the ingredients. You can't start making a cake. You can't start making a building, a product, an object, an experience if you don't have ingredients or resources to work with, And that's why I think like sometimes it can be very intimidating when you have too many things, too many ideas. You don't know where to start. You don't know what cake. It's like, let's say you have a fridge with all the unimaginable ingredients in the world, and then you have to make a dish. You will just freeze and be like, what do I make? I don't know what to make. But if you just have like, the bare fundamentals, like very simple ingredients and resources, like just what you have in front of you, and then you just work with what you have. You make something with what you have, and then you pump it out, and you give it to someone. You make it, you package it in a way that's made with care, and you give it to them, and you ask them like, what do you think? That for me is so much more creative than someone who has everything in the world and then they make something out of it. The constraints really makes you more creative. It allows for more interesting ideas and more pure, simple ideas. And it connects to sustainability, like the least resources you need to make something, the more sustainable it is. I was talking to this product designer back at O'Neill, like head of innovation when I was like working on a startup. And he was saying that because I was asking him about sustainability in his field of work, and he's a product designer. He makes physical, clothing and athletic wear, outdoor wear. And he was saying there is no product that is fully sustainable. As soon as you make a product, it is not sustainable because you are using other resources to make that product. So the real key is mitigation. And I won't go into detail about the whole sustainability thing. I think it's important to think about, but that's a whole other video on its own. But it just shows you that you need resources to create things. Which is why I think the information sector, like the information industry, so IT, software, is really fascinating because it uses resources that are at least like they're not physical. It's not like a material object that takes a lot of energy. I mean, you could argue that because especially now with like AI, it's very energy intensive. So probably not the most sustainable thing out there. Again, I don't have answers for that one. I know I talk about AI a lot. I also have my own views on AI. It's not all pros. There's definitely cons to it, but there are some pros as well. So it's a very touchy subject. But all this to say that you need to be observant. You have to gather this information in order to create something. Like, again, even that as an example, because things are so, they're so nuanced, it's not like A, B, C, like there's a lot of nuance to things. That's where ethics come. That's where humanities comes and social science. And you're trying to understand like, okay, but like, things are more complicated, but it's all information. It's all like things that are useful to know as designers and that will inform our future solutions. And I truly believe that there are solutions to any problem. And I know I can go into optimism and why it's so important to not just be optimistic, but be rationally optimistic. That means to look at the facts, cut the bullshit, and really understand what's out there and how the world works. Again, why it's important to observe and ask yourself, why is it like that? And make sense of it by asking people, by diving in on your own, like doing your own research, experimenting, trying, failing. You have to do those things, but you need to be optimistic to do that. You need to have some sort of drive that tells you that like, hey, we can make this better. We can improve this. We can find a solution. And a solution that will not just benefit a few people, but the majority of people. And so I know it's a big vision. That's what I try to do in my own line of work. I think that's how that's what has driven me through architecture, through design, urban design, product design. It's fundamentally trying to make sense of the world in order to improve it later on. So yeah, I think that's a good way to end the video. Again, I can talk about this for hours. I think I've just scratched the surface, but yeah, I think I'll leave it on that note. I don't want to mess it up and start rambling too much. But yeah, that's what I think about observation. So biggest tip for you guys. I don't even know what tip I would give, but okay, let's say a tip for myself when I was in undergrad is never stop sketching. And I say this as someone who sketched my whole life, especially early childhood, but then has stopped a lot of times because of university, because of, life stuff, responsibilities, money, like jobs, it is a luxury to be able to sketch and to draw because you need to have time off. But my biggest advice is to carve some time to sketch. And sketching things that exist, sketching things that don't exist, that are in your mind. But really sketch in order to understand. Don't just sketch to produce. Don't just sketch for the outcome. never sketch just to, I mean, that's not true. I would say like you can sketch for beauty. You can sketch because you want to make something beautiful out of it. But I think if you sketch in order to seek understanding, that will be much more productive, at least as a designer. If you're someone who wants to, reimagine frameworks, systems, products, physical environments, digital environments, how we interact with ourselves, with others, with the world, sketch it out, visualize it, like try to imagine your dream, your dream life, your dream world. And then you can even sketch your own life. I mean, that's another thing. It could be more on a self-improvement thing, like an improvement path. If you're more someone who is trying to make sense of like their career, their, where they want to be in life, like, you can design your life. But yeah, I think if you're working on a project like I am right now, and a few projects, and you feel stuck and you're just like, I don't know what the solution is to this. Like, I don't know, like there's just, I feel lost. Sketch on your own, no distraction, go out, make it your own, make it your own world, dive into world building, dive into curating everything, like going into those rabbit holes, take notes, make observations, learn from other things, take inspiration from things. Be like Leonardo da Vinci. that is a little tip I have, at least for today. So yeah, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a different one. I think this one was a bit more at least closer to what I like thinking about. If you like this format of me rambling and thinking and talking, like without, like, just let me know if there's something you resonated with specifically. I would love to know what it was, and if you have advice or ideas or something you didn't agree with, let me know. I love hearing what you guys don't agree with, because it just helps me see things in a different way. So yeah, on that note, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care and peace.